Okay, so this is an overview of how I created this image over here on the right. This is not a step-by-step instruction, just an overall overview. So if you're looking for a step-by-step, this is not it. I'll show you in Photoshop the layers that I did and just a quick overview going over what I did. And it's not detailed. If anybody's interested in seeing detailed instructions on how I do it, let me know. Other than that, it's just a basic overview. So with that in mind, this is the two images. The left is the before and the right's the after. The left is pretty much what I was able to get. Best I was able to do with the weather that I had that day when I was in marble shooting. This is already blended. The 3 different exposures, I should say, has been already blended in. And I did some basic corrections, color corrections, and some contrasting. That's about it. So otherwise, it's a raw image. Now, the right is the final product, as you can see. Obviously, I do know for many of you photography purists, well, if it's not done 100% in camera, then it's not a real photo type thing. If you're one of those people, no offense, but anyways, I used to think that way myself. But then I kind of grew as an artist, and that's the other aspect. Now, when it comes to the philosophical aspects of the purposes of art, that's a whole different discussion that we can get into later. No, we're not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into a discussion about the philosophical purposes behind art. When it comes to photographic art, fine art photography, well, here you have it. There are people, yeah, it's true, there are purposes for having a more of a, what would be considered a documentarian style photography. That's more true to real life. Yeah, that's fine. There are plenty of people who do it. I used to do it too. And I definitely experienced this last year. Is that you're not always going to get what you want. Last year was horrible. We were in a really bad drought. We didn't have hardly any moisture. It was day after day after day after day after day of nothing but sun. It gets frustrating after a while that you want to go out and shoot, but you can't because it's just going to be clear skies. Clear, bland, boring skies. Again, day after day after day, and it's just not conducive. You can get by with it. Some people can get by with it. That's not my style. My preference is to plan according to, or to go on shoots that coincide with passing of storm systems. That's when you get the most dramatic lighting and weather conditions. It's when storm systems are leaving, starting to clear out. And I always try and plan for it. Like I said, last year was just not a good year, and I learned that the hard way. You're not going to get what you want all the time. And last year, especially almost the entire damn year, was really, really, really bad. And when I did get out, more than anything, I was getting smoke. And I just made things, in many cases, look hideous. Sometimes it created really spectacular lighting. Other times it just was black. To put it in black. However, no word can describe how lousy it could be, The other thing is, too, like I said in the previous video, is that, it was primarily a scouting trip, but I wanted to get some photos, get out for the first time in a while. But they were predicting clear skies. So, in other words, a very bland, boring sunset. That's what they're predicting, and I checked right before I even left, and yet, here we go. It's cloudy, dreary, gray, and rain, with snow up high. So, how do you go from clear skies to cloudy, dreary rain? Beyond me. Well, it isn't beyond me. This is the Rockies. And that's the other issue, is with many mountain ranges around the world, and especially with the mountains, more than anything else, especially the higher mountain peaks. The Rockies are not the Himalayas, but don't have to be the Himalayas. Rockies, the Alps, the Andes, the Himalayas, all the way up there, all the way up to that, But any of those mountain ranges, they produce their own weather, interfere or disrupt with whole weather patterns, and yet they can create their own smaller weather patterns. So that's creating a significant unpredictability with these mountains. I've seen it in situations like that. I've been in our mountains here where it's snowing on one side of the mountain range and sun on the other. That's the problem when you're dealing with mountains. But outside of all the philosophical purposes behind, or philosophical questions behind photography and art and everything, and the ending of my rant about it, again, like I said, this is an overview and not a step-by-step guide. Like I said, if you want a step-by-step guide, comment down below, and then maybe I will consider producing one. That would be a very lengthy video, far longer than this video is going to be. All right, without further ado, we shall continue. See you in a second. Bye-bye. Alright, this is the final image, and this is the before image. Alright, we start with this one. This is the original. This is what I photographed at that beaver pond down near Marble. And as you could tell, I expanded the canvas here and to give me more room to work with. But this is essentially all I was able to get that entire time I was there. So it was nothing special. It was pretty hideous. This is where photography becomes an art. So start with, I selected the sky. I did a quick selection of the sky, then I copied a part of another image over and placed it in the sky with a mask, and that's the sky. And that actually came from this. I made some adjustments with it before putting in Photoshop, but this is essentially what image I was working with. We'll just click that out now. So that eventually is the sky. I reversed it. Obviously it was a panoramic image, and originally I actually created a panel of the rainbow, but then I had to use the transform tool to kind of make it fit in this image here, which is not a panoramic. So that's the sky. And with that selection I was able to make a mask. There's a mask. Black conceals, white reveals. So now the foreground, or the original photo, is blocked out of this whole scene here. So the other step, I noticed that this image was too cool, doesn't match the sky, the warmth on the sky here. So I had to create a little color adjustment right here. I made adjustments in the shadows, a little bit in midtones, and then quite a bit on the highlights. Shadows, actually, I cooled the shadows a little bit, add a little bit of blue and green, but then the midtones, I put a lot more red, or a little bit of touch of red, and the highlights is where I did the majority of the work, where I added a lot of yellow and a little bit of red again in the highlights to make it a little bit warmer. As you can see, slight difference. It's not much, but it's enough to match the sky a little bit. So that's the top. That's the main image. And after that, I had to do that reflection, and the reflection essentially was copy this scene, the mountain scene here, nothing else, and then I just copied it and inverted it. Let's get rid of that a little quick, and as you can see, I blended it. What I blended it with is these ripples right here. So I just blended them to get blended in with a mask. I use a mask and a brush. On the brush, very low opacity. Then same time I also had to warm this reflection. So I just copied this image, I selected it, and then I just inverted it and brought it down and masked it in. Use the mask. See, there's the original image, there's a mask. Oops, I didn't want to select. No, not select. See, and that's the mask. So you can see some of the brush marks. So that's the reflection off the mountain here. Then, of course, with this sky, that doesn't match. So I had to make a reflection of the sky, right? And I did the same thing. I just copied an exact same copy of this with a mask, and I just inverted it. And thus you get that. Now all I did was just a copy and an invert. Both the image and the mask itself, inverted it. So now, as you can tell, actually the reflection looks a little too bright. And normally reflections are darker than the actual main ground and sky itself. So I did have to darken it. And I started with the mountain scene. And then, again, with that sky, I had to add another layer to darken the sky. And I just clipped it. You see this little arrow here? I just had to clip the two together so it wouldn't affect anything below it, including this area. We didn't want to darken that any at all. And that was just a reflection right there. Simple, basic reflection. I just copied the mountain, brought it down, including the mask, flipped the mask. It's just the transform tool. Control T, and then invert it vertically, 90 degree or 180 degrees. Invert. That's not it. Transform. Flip vertical. As you see over here, flip vertical. That's what I did. I did it with the image and the mask. Now I had to disconnect the mask from the image because I had to move the image around, each image around to put it in the right position I wanted to. So I had to disconnect the mask from the layer itself, because otherwise if it was connected locked to the layer, when I moved the image around, the mask would move with it, and you didn't want that. And I could show you right now what will happen. Just click the Alt key and click in between. Alright, so let's turn this all off. Alright, let's just get this. So these are locked. Okay, watch, see the mask goes with it, right? And let's actually turn this on. See that? And then the mask moves with it. Let's get that reflection in there. See, when a mask moves with it, I didn't want to move it, so click the Alt key and unlock it. That way, and let's move everything back the way it was. There we go. I moved everything back the way it was. So now, thank you. There we go. Now I can move it. See? Without moving the mask. But I don't want to do that now. So that's how I did it. Select the image, copy it, invert it, take the same mask, create a mask, and invert it as well. Unlock it. Make sure you unlock the mask from the layer, and there you have it. And then some other touch-ups. Reflections are always darker than the sky itself, or the sky and everything. The reflection's darker, so there you go. And then some touch-ups. I did use actually a little Color Effects Pro here, contrast and so on, to brighten it up a little bit and make it pop. Then a curves layer, masked out for the reflection. Another curves layer on the edges here, masked out, and then a sharpening layer that just sharpened it. It's actually the high pass filter set to overlay. It's about radius of about 3. 3 is pretty good. I get a good sharpened image and then just set it to overlay. And that's it. Simple. Very simple image. What can I say? I boo-booed. I really boo-booed. I left something out. A very important step with a reflection. So this is the original image. This is the main image. Original here. This is the main image. And see how sharp, it's sharp, right? Tack sharp detail, but you come down to reflection. What? It's not tack sharp. Well, you don't want it tack sharp, right? It's a reflection. And that's a step that I forgot to mention. And it's just simple blurring, couple blurring, and I'll just quickly show you real quick how it works. You take the layer, the reflection layer, and I will just go, let's see here, let's just, oops, that's not the reflection. Here's the reflection. We will just do this. We'll just start with this mountain scene. Okay, now let's zoom in. I'll duplicate it. Here, the effect, and this is the reflection here. So let's click on that, and basically, you just go to a blur. And the first step is a motion blur. And you set it at 90-degree angle. That's the first step, and it doesn't have to go much. You don't want, sure as hell don't want that. You really don't want that, obviously, so you just keep it down. Just enough to blur it a little bit so it's not so tack sharp. And then I'll just go ahead and cancel that out since I already had done it. But once you do that, the next step is go back to filter and do another blur. This time Gaussian blur, Gaussian, however you want to call it. Click on that, and then a small radius. Usually 2 pixels is not enough. No, but let's just zoom in real quick. Let's just see. Actually, let's go to the main image here. I'll just show you real quick this one. So where's blur, up here. Blur, Gaussian or Gaussian blur. See? And that's a 2.5 pixels. So that's actually a pretty low pixel radius. That actually might even work. So click on that. And that's it. So review, and let's undo that effect. Review, you take your reflection, you click on the layer with your reflection, you start with filter, blur, motion blur, set about 90 degrees. Doesn't have to be exactly 90 degrees, but about 90 degrees is best. And then play with the radius of the pixels, or distance in the pixels, and depending on the effect you really want, you can go crazy, you could go wacky, wee, holy moly, see that, yeah, go down 26, whatever, And then, once you're complete with that, when you're happy with that, go to blur again, and then go to Gaussian or Gaussian blur, however you prefer to pronounce it. And you don't need to go very far, obviously. Whoops, I went 81 pixels. I don't want that. Definitely don't want that. 6 pixels, but at least with this, might actually be too much. In and of itself. So, it doesn't have to be very many pixels. Very low pixels. 3, 4 pixels, 2, 3, 4 pixels works good. And I'm going to cancel out of that. Okay, and that's how you actually make, this tack sharp image copied to look like an actual reflection with water, Very simple. And we'll bring the sky back in and zoom out there. Did the same with the sky. That's it. So I hope you guys like that tutorial, little mini tutorial. And I hope you learned something from it. And if you did, hey, come on and subscribe to my channel and maybe comment down below. I do have online courses through Skillshare, and I'll include the links down in the description below. So until then, till the next video, see ya.